Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Meezan lecture series. This series of lectures, as you know, is based on Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi's interpretation and understanding of Islam, the way he has written in his book Meezan. We have studied some chapters earlier on, and inshallah we'll study the remaining chapters. The sequence that we have adopted is not the same as is found in the book. So once this series is complete, these lectures will be arranged in the sequence in which the book is. Today we will take up a topic which is called the social Shariah, and as you all know that this belongs to the Shariah part of the book. So the book has been divided into two components. One component is the Al-Hikmah component, and which consists of chapters on morality and faith, and then we have another component which relates to chapters on Sharia, and these are 10 chapters. And prior to both these components, we have two forewords to the book, and so inshallah we'll be studying those as well. So as far as today's topic is concerned, the social Sharia, as you would all know, this is something which is deeply related to all of us in some form or the other, and the reason for this is that the topics that we are going to discuss today, as you shall see, they all relate to our everyday household chores and work keeping, as well as some of the important relationships that we have amongst ourselves, and the way we need to conduct ourselves as parents and as husbands and wife, and at the same time set up a society which is conducive to the next generation. So as far as today's topic is concerned, or the social Sharia itself is concerned, this is a topic in which there are 14 subtopics, and I'm just going to enumerate these topics before we start off studying them. So the first relates to marriage and how marriage has been dealt with in the Quran. Then we have relations prohibited for marriage. In the third instance, we'll be discussing the bounds and conditions of marriage, which means that what are the restrictions and as well as the requisites of a marriage bond is concerned. The fourth topic would be the rights and obligations of the spouses, which is of course very important given the fact that marriage is a companionship between two individuals, and we have to understand that rights and obligations, they are in order and they must be fulfilled by both spouses. In the fifth place, we will study polygamy, which is of course something which is dealt with in the Quran with a special reference. So we will see what the Quranic directives are regarding polygamy. Etiquette of sexual intimacy is something that we'll study in the sixth topic, and this is again something very important because a lot of misinformation and confusion actually prevails regarding this particular topic, and there are either two extremes which are generally found in the formation and discussion of this topic. And then we'll take up a topic which is called Ila, and this was a form of divorce given in the pre-Quranic society. Similar is the case for the eighth topic, which is Zihar. And then in the ninth topic would be related to the divorce or the divorce directives of the Quran, which are of course very important given the fact that this is another area which the Quran has guided mankind in detail, so that once marriage is to be dissolved, then one should clearly know the rights and obligations that ensue. In the 10th place, we'll study directives relating to widows, and then 11th is norms of gender interaction, which of course are equally important because in a society in which men and women are moving about, doing their chores and carrying out their various obligations, it is important to note that how decently they should be dressed and how they should interact with one another. And the 12th directive or the 12th topic relates to directives related to parents, and of course this is also an extremely important area of our social fabric given the fact that once parents they reach a certain age, they are to be dealt with in a very, very affectionate way. The 13th topic relates to directives about orphans, and as we know, orphans being the weaker section of our society, they need our special care and devotion and sympathy as well. So the Quranic guidance regarding orphans will be discussed Finally, the last topic is the topic of slavery. Again, a very sensitive topic. This is something which Islam inherited in its own times. The pre-Quranic times, slavery was rampant in the Arab society, and the Quran undertook a gradual strategy to eliminate this inhuman institution, and finally gave a final verdict regarding the liberation and emancipation of slaves. So now we will take up these topics one by one. The most important area in this regard is that we have to understand that as far as the Quran is concerned, the Quran says that the only way through which the next generation can be properly nourished is through a family. A boy or a girl, an infant born to a family needs the affection of the father and the mother. And because this affection is something which he or she would be needing, not only through childhood, but of course as he or she would move along in life when they will become adults. So they would be needing the extended family to look after them. And once any person who would enter old age, if that is the situation when it arises, is a situation in which the person would be needing the help and support of his spouse or her spouse, and at the same time of the extended family. So this life cycle of human beings, in which he is born as an infant, he grows through various phases in life, and then ultimately grows old. This lifestyle is such that he, except for maybe a few years of his adult life, he is dependent on various relations. He cannot survive independently. A social setup or a family setup is his basic need, and therefore that is why Quran says that this is something which can be fulfilled only through a permanent and everlasting marriage bond between the spouses. And the husband and the wife, they come together, and when they come together in this way, they are able to bring into being a family which is going to take care of the young ones, and at the same time, as they grow old, as the spouses grow old, they become dependent on each other as well. They are dependent on the care given by one spouse to the other. And so therefore, the only solution for a human being who has to go through all these life cycles is to make him live through this permanent bond of marriage. Of course, in case there is some difficulty, and of course if the extreme situation arises in which the marriage bond has to be revoked, that provision has also been placed in the Quran, and it gives guidance to people that how, in case marriage has to be dissolved, and what should be done. But that is just an exception, that is just a way out. Otherwise, the purport of the Quran and of human nature is that this bond of family relationship, this bond of marriage should continue throughout our life, and until and unless there is something very exceptional, it should continue and not be broken. And the important thing which the Quran has said in this regard is that husband and wife, of course, man and woman, they are made to come together in a way that they should realize that the Almighty has been very gracious to them. The Almighty has been very kind to them by telling them that they are born of the same species. And because of the fact that they are born of the same species, they can benefit from one another, and at the same time also have that marriage bond between them strengthened and reinforced. So the basic verse in this regard, which the Quran has said, is now being displayed before you on your screens. It says, Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawjaha wa batha minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisa wattaqullaha allazi tasaaluna bihi wal arham inna allaha kana alaykum raqiba. Mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from a single person, created of like species his mate, and from these two scattered countless men and women in this world, and fear Allah, through whom you seek mutual help and fair breaking blood relationships. Indeed, God is watching over you. So, man and woman, a husband and wife, when they come together in the form of a family, they are told that this is how the Almighty has made them together for each other. And a word of caution which is spelled out in this verse is that remember that both of you are from the same species, and so therefore they should never come in this discussion of who is superior and who is inferior. Both of them are from the same species. Both of them, therefore, are equal in stature as far as husband and wife are concerned, as far as man and woman are concerned. They cannot be differentiated. Yes, there could be difference of roles, which we shall see as we go along studying the social Sharia. They are stipulated to both the husband and wife, but as far as their status as human beings is concerned, the Quran is absolutely certain that they are of equal status, and one cannot in any way regard one to be inferior to the other. And this, in fact, is a big correction which the Quran has made in human ideology. And we have to remember, when the Quran was being revealed, it was a time in which women were regarded to be absolutely second grade, if I may say, or even third grade citizens or members of the society, and they were treated as if they were commodities in some aspects. They did not enjoy rights and a lot of obligations that they owed to their family were ones which went on from their side, but seldom they were reciprocated. So that is why the Quran has made it emphatically, has stated this very emphatically, that the two are equal in stature. And next, the Quran has said that marriage bond is the important bond which is to be understood. And for this purpose, the Quran has said, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And among His signs is that He created for you mates from among your species, that you may obtain comfort from them. And for this purpose He has put love and sympathy within you. Surely in this are signs for those who reflect. So clearly we can see that as far as marriage is concerned, you can see that one of the purposes, or in fact the main purpose which this verse mentions, is in those sublime words, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you are able to obtain comfort from them. So it is this comfort and this mutual harmony which ensues if the marriage bond is properly looked after and nourished. And it is this very important area that we have to understand today, especially when the institution of marriage itself is on a trial, and after a few initial months of euphoria, we do find that husband and wife falling apart in this relationship. And in fact, one of the reasons of this falling apart is that the philosophy of the institution of marriage is seldom understood, and one is generally more romantic, I would say, or more idealist in its approach as far as relationships are concerned. We know these relationships, they undergo a lot of changes once this family comes into being. You might be knowing someone before your marriage as a potential husband or a spouse, but once you get married, the same person that you knew before marriage comes before you in a very different form, because initially people were exposed to one another in a very limited way. You were having the best exposure to the other person. You were having the best impression that you could have gotten. But once you get married, the important thing that we fail to realize is that habits, they come into play, and you get to know your spouse much more closely, and very, very minute habits, they tend to influence one another, and also the peace of the family and the house that the two are living in. So that is precisely why the Quran has said that this marriage basically is an accommodation. It's like a companionship between two individuals, in which your purpose is to provide comfort to your partner, and this is like a reciprocal benefit that you give. You give this comfort to your spouse, and your spouse returns this to yourself. And we also know, dear viewers, that the very structure of a human being is such that men and women, the way they are brought together in the form of a husband and wife, they have these inbuilt vacuum, I would say, or inbuilt things in which you need, as if you feel as if there is something missing. And the spouse, when they come together, they supplement and complement one another in various ways. There are things which are missing in a wife which a husband fulfills, and there are things which are missing in a husband which a wife fulfills, and the two come together, and the most important area of their coming together is to give not only that comfort that is needed for one another's well-being, but also to your children, or the children that are going to be produced as a result of this marriage bond. So they need the affection of the husband, of the father, and they need the affection of the mother as well. And that is why, dear viewers, the Quran specially makes this emphasis on the fact that it has to be a marriage between the opposite genders. So we see that today, as we find out in a lot of countries, that same gender marriages are being allowed. So not only are they against the scheme of the Almighty, but also they fail to realize that this scheme is something which provides this effect and this influence, I would say, and this impact on the younger generation, which one gender can do and the other cannot replace. So in other words, what a father can do for the children is something which a mother cannot do, and what a mother can do is something which fathers cannot do. It is only through their mutual coming together in harmony that fathers and mothers are able to play a role for their children. And two fathers or two mothers, of course, are a family which can never produce children which are balanced individuals, in the sense that they need this care of opposite genders, the way we have just described. So as far as the Quran is concerned, we have now come to the basic philosophy, to understand this basic philosophy, that this is an everlasting marriage bond created for the comfort of the spouses and created for the individual who is to be born among them, because he or she, the infant, needs the nourishment and the love and the affection of both parents. So now let us go on to study the first of these directives, which is called marriage or nikah. And before I begin, I must also point this out, that as far as marriage is concerned, this is not something which the Quran has pointed out for the first time. Marriage is an age-old sunnah of the prophets of God, and that is precisely why when we get married or our children get married, we find the sermonizer or the person who gives the sermon say these words, "Nikahu min sunnati," which means that the Prophet is saying that this is my way, this is my established practice that he has inherited from the previous prophets. So it's not that the Quran is giving this directive for the first time. It is only expressing something which is already pre-found in the society. And let us see how this is mentioned in the Quran. So I'm not going to read the Arabic now, just to save more time. I'm just going to read the translation. So it says, "And marry those among you who are single, and those who have the capability for marriage among your slaves, male or female. If they are poor, Allah will give them means out of His grace. For Allah is ample giving, and He knows all things. And let those who find not an opportunity for marriage keep themselves chaste, until Allah gives them means out of His grace." So the important thing that we have to understand is that the Almighty says that there is just one legitimate way, one legal way to satisfy one's sexual desire, and that is through women. So only men and women, when they come together in the form of a marriage bond, that is the only legitimate, that is the only legal way, that is the only allowed way for men and women to satisfy their sexual urge. And the important thing which you can see from this verse is that if marriage is somehow not possible, then the Quran says that this cannot become a license for them to gratify their sexual urge without entering a marital bond. So the Quran has said that the society is urged to marry off individuals who have not been able to marry. So ankihul ayyama minkum would mean that marry those among you who are single. And that is why this is something which is like an appeal made by the Quran. And also important here is the fact that the Quran has said that as far as individuals who are to get married are concerned, then it says that the words used are ayyam minkum was-salihina min ibadikum wa imaikum, and not only from among your free men and women, but because of the fact we know that in those times the institution of slavery was still in vogue and in practice. So the Quran has also said that make this step also, take this step also to marry slave men and women among other people amongst themselves. And the Quran has also said that if the people are poor, then don't think that this is something which should stop you from undertaking marriage. In fact, if you marry in spite of being poor and not having the resources, God says, يُغْنِيهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, God is going to give them means out of His grace. And as far as marriage is concerned, if one is not getting married for some reason, then the Quran says that this should not be something which should give them a license for licentiousness or out of wedlock relations. So one important thing, dear viewers, that has to be known, that I've just referred to, is that marriage is something which is an age-old institution. It was something which is already being practiced by prophets of God. And the word nikah, which is the Arabic word for marriage, it means an open declaration of this relationship between a husband and wife, that they are now living as spouses. So it's like an open relationship. The society knows who these people are and that they are living as husband and wife. It's not a clandestine relationship. It's not a hidden or secret relationship. It has to come to the fore. It has to come in front of every person that these are the two individuals who are now living as husband and wife. So the word nikah itself, so is a word which refers to the fact that it's an openly known relationship. It's something which is well known to the society. In other words, what the Quran is telling us here is that once this marriage takes place, it has to be openly announced. It is something which has to be declared and proclaimed in the society. Of course, in front of people who are there to witness the marriage, and otherwise through other means as well. So, important thing is to realize that marriage is a declared open relationship, and it is not something that must remain hidden or clandestine. Now we come to the area in which relationships which are prohibited for marriage are discussed, and I'm just once again going to read out a verse. In fact, these are 3 verses of the Quran regarding relations which are prohibited. So the important thing that is to realize is that a person cannot marry all relations. So relations which are prohibited as a result of marriage, they must not be in any way undertaken. So for example, you just cannot marry amongst your family or your blood relatives. And the Quran has actually made some corrections here, because there were some quarters in the pre-Quranic society which indulged in certain marriage forms that the Quran has proscribed and regarded to be illegal. Otherwise, as far as these prohibited relations are concerned, they were well known to the Arab society. So once the Quran, this is the style of the Quran, that once it starts to correct one particular area, so what it does is that it does not just confine itself in that correction to that one particular area. So it will have that area corrected, and then it will spell out some of the other details already known as well. And precisely this is what has happened in these verses. So I'm just going to read out the translation of these verses. And marry not women whom your fathers married, except what has been done in the past. So this is referring to your stepmothers. So this was something which is rampant in the Arab society of those times, and the Quran says, marry not women whom your fathers married, except what has been done in the past. It was shameful and odious, and abominable practice indeed. Prohibited to you for marriage are your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your maternal and paternal aunts, the daughters of your brothers and sisters, your mothers who have suckled you, and your sisters through fosterage. Similarly, the mothers of your wives, your stepdaughters raised under you, born of your wives with whom you have lain. No offense if you have not lain with their mothers. And the wives of your real sons, and 2 sisters in wedlock at the same time, except for what has already happened. God indeed is oft forgiving, most merciful. Also prohibited are women already married, except those whom your right hand possess. This is a written obligation upon you from God. So viewers, you can see that how comprehensive this verse is, and how it covers the 3 areas which are prohibited vis-a-vis our relations. So prohibition as regards marriage. So we have prohibitions as regards, so we can say that prohibition regards lineage, prohibitions which are as a result of fosterage, and finally we have prohibitions which result as because of the fact that our relationships with our own marriage individuals are different in our own categories. So let's first begin with an explanation of the initial words of this verse, and you can see that if you just I'm just going to display this verse once again before you, so that you know that as far as this verse is concerned, the first part of this verse where this prohibition begins, and the last part is something which is very common. I mean, which is absolutely something which we know that should be prohibited, and that which I just pointed out, that the first relationship that is prohibited is that stepmothers, as you can see, are totally prohibited. And as far as stepmothers are concerned, we know that this happened as a practice in the Arab society, and stepmothers would be inherited by the person. So he would be inheriting the stepmothers who were owned by his father, and people would then marry their stepmother. So the Quran has said that this is something which is absolutely forbidden, and it is open lewdness and a shameful and abominable practice. So it says that innahu kana fahishatan wa maqta wa sa'a sabila. It's a detestable practice. It's a absolutely abominable practice. You just cannot marry even your stepmother, what to speak of your own mother. You just cannot even marry her. And if you look at the last part of this verse, it says wal muhsanatu minan nisa. So the last prohibited relation are women who are already married. So if you look at the verse, the way we see this verse encircling certain components or certain relationships which are prohibited, you will find that the verse starts off with a stepmother's prohibition, and it ends with the prohibition of women who are already married. You cannot marry women who are already married, unless of course they seek divorce and they are legally separated, and then you can marry them. So you cannot marry your stepmothers, you cannot marry women who are already married. This is how this verse encircles all these relations, and in between these you will find that there are 7 relations which are prohibited, and you can see that these 7 relations are ones which all of us they clearly know that they are something which we simply cannot undertake in marriage. So these are the relations which we are discussing, which relate to lineage. So as far as our lineage is concerned, they cannot be married. So stepmother cannot be married, and women who are already in wedlock cannot be married. Now, besides them, let's see what this verse says. This verse says that daughters, sisters, paternal aunts, maternal aunts, and the daughters of the brothers and sisters, which of course constitute nephews and nieces. So these are 7 relations which possess sanctity, and such is the nature of this sanctity that our own nature testifies that any sexual leaning towards them is totally unbecoming. And there is no doubt that in a society in which these relations they become allowed and people indulge in marriage with them, then such a society loses its nobility and its purity and its spirit of coming together in the form of a marriage bond in which there has to be some chastity and modesty involved. So what in fact is implied here, that the Almighty wants the gaze of a son for his mother, of a father for his daughter, of a brother for his sister, and of a nephew for both his maternal and paternal aunts, to be free from the slightest trace of sexual leaning. And that is why it is very important that this directive is something that has to be adhered to in all circumstances. But as you can see in this verse as we go along, that there are certain stipulations which are given. I'm just going to describe before you these stipulations. So firstly, the words used for these relations in Arabic entail that no distinction should be made between real and step relations. So when I speak of stepsister, it will, I mean, the word, in fact, what I can say is that a real sister encompasses a half sister as well. So the way these words are mentioned in the Arabic language, it leaves no option for the fact that a half sister or a stepsister be left out. In fact, I would specifically say this, that half sisters or half brothers are equally applicable. Their existence is equally applicable here. So this is very important to note, because in Arabic language you don't have words for half brothers like this or half sisters. Secondly, we should also note that the word which is the word used for mother, it just does not stop with your own mother. It will go on to include your grandmother, whether she is your paternal or your maternal grandmother. So your father's mother is also your mother, and your mother's mother is also your mother. In fact, this can go all the way up from the paternal side and from the maternal side, because in the Arabic language the word encompasses these relationships. So in other words, what is being said here is that it is just not your mother that is being pointed out here. The word, the relationship that we call our grandmother is equally implied here. She is, although she is not mentioned here, but since the word is used, which means mother, so the grandmother and the great grandmother and so on and so forth, they are equally implied. Similarly, if we go down, then the daughter, the daughter would not stop at your own daughter. It will also extend to your daughter's daughter and to your daughter's daughter's daughter, your granddaughter or your great granddaughter. Similarly, your son or your great grandson. So this will go on, not only going above but also below. So no discrimination can be made between them regarding this directive. Thirdly, the sister of the maternal grandfather and the sister of the paternal grandmother are like paternal and maternal aunts respectively. So the sister of your maternal grandfather, sister of your maternal grandfather and the sister of your paternal grandfather are like your paternal and maternal aunts respectively. So they shall also be included in the application of this directive. It's all an issue of linguistics. In Arabic, the way we use these words, you just cannot make them confined to just that connotation that we might think that it literally has. So a mother or a daughter would not just be confined to your mother and your daughter. It will extend to your grandmother and to your great grandmother, and similarly to your daughter, to your granddaughter and to your great granddaughter in the same sense. Next, if you see from the verse that the relations which are prohibited through fosterage, they are discussed. So the words are, what is said here is وَأُمَّهَاتُكُمُ الَّتِي أَرْضَعْنَاكُمْ وَأَخَوَاتُكُمْ مِنَ الرَّضَاعَةِ. So it says that a mother who suckles and brings up a child is a half mother, and she's not a full mother. However, how is it possible that a child not be influenced by someone whose milk has been nourished, and she has nourished and sustained that child from her milk? So this influence is like already there, and that is why the Quran says that as far as foster relationships are concerned, they are exactly of the same nature as the real relationships. So وَأُمَّهَاتُكُمُ الَّتِي أَرْضَعْنَاكُمْ would mean your mothers who have suckled you. And the important thing that we have to understand here is that the word raza'a, which means to suckle your young, is used with respect to akhawatukum min ar-radha as well, your sisters through fosterage. So people who are conversant with the depths and subtleties of the Arabic language know that the word irda is from the if'al category, which has a general element of emphasis in it. And the word radha is used, which means that you are going to feed a boy or a girl in that age in which he or she needs that succor and that fodder in the form of milk. It's not used for, if some boy or girl is crying and some mother feeds that boy or girl merely to soothe that crying child, that would not affect in any way, and such a mother would not be regarded to be a foster mother, because she's not doing it for the purpose of suckling that child. She's just doing it to just quieting it down. So the important thing here is that as far as these relations are concerned, they are to be understood in the same sense as the Quran has said, that your foster sister is someone who has been nourished. She shall be in the same way prohibited to you. And if in a very similar way we have extended relations, for example a foster brother or other relations, they will also be equally held in the same status. So in this way we have to understand that as far as fosterage is concerned, this is something which the Quran has said that has to be fully given importance. And that is why you can see that as far as this fosterage is concerned, that people who regard fosterage to be an important area of marriage, of marriage to be prohibited, then that is something that has to be understood not only from the Quran, which has been very clear in this regard, that relations which are prohibited through fosterage are of equal importance. I mean, they are also prohibited the way relations which are prohibited through lineage is concerned. So in order to explain this very fact, the Prophet is also reported to have said that if one or two drops are drunk by chance, then this does not prohibit a relationship. You see, the important area is that you have to understand that as far as fosterage is concerned, it does not take place through a mere feeding of a couple of drops to soothe an individual. It has to be done in order to make that child, to feed that child the way you feed your own children, and the purpose is that you will going to suckle him or her for the stipulated period of time. Now, there is one incident that did happen in the times of Prophet, in which there is this issue which has risen regarding adult fosterage, in which we know that a person was an adult and he was actually the son of Abu Huzaifa radiyallahu anhu, and he was suckled in mature age. And so therefore, his name was Salim, and Salim was the adopted son of Abu Huzaifa. So he was suckled in mature age, and the reason was a very specific reason, and because he was being brought up at that time and this verse was being revealed. And what can best be said, as Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi has pointed out, that this is what the Prophet had suggested to deal with a situation that had arisen when a newly revealed directive of the Quran was there about adopted children. So Salim, who was the adopted son of Abu Huzaifa, he was an adult boy who was living with them, and the Prophet just suggested that if he has to live with you in a situation that he becomes a mahram, then he can be suckled. But as I said, that this is an exceptional case which was done at the time of the revelation of these verses, which the Quran has emphatically said it cannot be made a general directive. And as far as the Quran is concerned, you can clearly see that we find this word irda being used, and the way it has been mentioned, that it has to be a proper form of fosterage that has to be adopted. So as far as this incident is concerned, let me also narrate to you the way it has been reported in the Sunan of Abu Dawud, this incident of Huzaifa's son, Salim. So Sahla, who was the wife of Abu Huzaifa and the daughter of Suhail ibn Amr al-Qarshi al-Amiri, once came to the Prophet and said, "O Messenger of God, we always considered Salim as our son. He used to live with me and with Abu Huzaifa in the same house, and would see me in my house clothes. You are well aware of the directive which the Almighty has revealed about such boys. Now, what is your opinion regarding this matter?" The Prophet replied, "Feed him with your milk." So, of course, she would have taken out milk from her breast and maybe in a glass, and then would have fed Salim. And this is a situation, as you can see, that the Prophet was faced with, and he gave this suggestion that in order to deal with the situation, because they had regarded him to be his real son, the Prophet said, well, if this is the case, then just feed him with your milk and he'll become your real son. So the point that is being made here is that this is not a normal situation. It cannot be made a habit. It cannot be made a practice. Fosterage only takes place when the boy or the girl who is to be fed is in that age in which boys or girls, or infants to be precise, they take milk. So as far as foster relationships are concerned, the Quran is also very emphatic in this, that they prohibit relationship just as lineage relationships also prohibit them. So as far as the details of some of these aspects are concerned, I'm just going to read out what Ustaz has written in his book Meezan. So he says that the words used are وَأُمَّهَاتُكُمُ الَّتِي أَرْضَعْنَاكُمْ وَأَخَوَاتُكُم مِنَ الرَّضَاعَةِ. As stated together with foster mothers, foster sisters are also regarded as relations prohibited for marriage. Had the directive ended with foster mothers, nothing further could have been understood from it. However, if the relationship of fosterage with the mother makes her a daughter, a foster sister, then it is but logical to regard other relations of the foster mother to be also included in this directive. If being suckled to the same mother can make a girl a foster sister, why can't the sister of the foster mother be regarded as the maternal aunt, her husband as the father, the sister of her husband as the paternal aunt, her daughter's daughter and her son's daughter as nieces? So it is obvious that all these relations are also prohibited in marriage. This indeed is the purport of the book of God and the words وَأَخَوَاتُكُم مِنَ الرَّضَاعَةِ. And if it is evident to any person of knowledge who deliberates on these words, for what Ustaz is telling us here is that basically had the verse ended on ummahatukum allati arda'nakum, then only the mother would have been prohibited. However, because other relations are included and just one relation of those categories is mentioned, which is akhawatukum min ar-rada'a, which means your sisters through fosterage, this will now automatically include all other relations. So it's not just the mother who has suckled you who is going to be prohibited. Her son, her daughter, similarly other relations who would be prohibited in the case she would have been your real mother, in precisely the same way that foster mothers, other relations shall also stand prohibited. And that is what the Quran has said, and that is what the Prophet has also said. So we know that there is this narrative from the Muwatta of Imam Malik. It says that every relationship which is prohibited for marriage owing to lineage is also prohibited owing to fosterage. So this is what we have to understand as far as the Quran is concerned. Now we come to the third part which is mentioned in the Quran, and relations which are prohibited through marriage itself. So as far as relations are concerned, we know that these relations, the way they have been mentioned in the Quran, they are so obvious that you don't need to tell yourself that your mother and your sisters and your daughters are prohibited. So what we are implying here is that there is no reasoning which is actually required. So the daughter-in-law is also prohibited for the father, and the mother-in-law, the wife's daughter, the wife's sister, and both nieces of the wife, the maternal and maternal aunts of the wife, are all prohibited for the husband. But since these relationships are formed through the husband and the wife, a degree of weakness is found in them. This is but natural. And because of this degree of weakness, because of course you can divorce your wife, the wife can get a divorce from the husband and get separated. So relationships which are formed as a result of this marriage, once this marriage itself gets dissolved, they will revert back. And that is why we say that there is a little weakness in this particular form of prohibition. So the first thing which is important here is that only the daughter of that wife is prohibited with whom one has had conjugal contact. So daughter of that wife, of course this refers to that daughter which that wife has brought to one's family from the previous husband. So the Quran says if there is conjugal contact, if there is a sexual contact between this wife and the husband, only then her daughter would be prohibited for the husband. And if this is not the case and the two get separated or divorced and the two haven't had sexual relation, then the daughter of that wife, of that person, of the mother would be legal to be married to the husband. And secondly, only the daughter-in-law of a real son is prohibited. The important thing is that adopted sons, daughters-in-law, they are absolutely not prohibited at all, because of course they are not real. And that is why the Quran has said halailu abnaikum allazina min aslabikum. So your daughters-in-law of your sons which are born from you. And the third thing is that the sister of a wife, her maternal aunt and paternal aunts and her two nieces are only prohibited if the wife is in wedlock with the husband. So you cannot marry two sisters, of course. So that is why And that is, of course, understood when you are married to someone, that you cannot marry the wife of that woman at the same time. And because of this, because of the same reason, her maternal and her paternal aunts and her two nieces can also not be married, because that would have the same reasoning for prohibition. Now, the important point here is that we have to understand that the Quran has said that women who are in conjugal, with whom there is no conjugal contact, only they are the ones whose daughters are allowed, which they have brought from the previous husband if they get divorced. So this is something which is very important as far as the Quran is concerned. The important thing in this regard, which I'd like to also this time read out from Ustaz Javed Ghamidi's book, Meezan. Again, it's his translation, so that you're able to understand why is it that he insists that women with whom you don't have any conjugal contact, their daughters can be married, daughters which have been brought from their previous husband. So he says, in the Arabic language, not every attribute is meant to impose a condition such that if the attribute does not exist, the directive would stand null and void. Intrinsic evidence and the context of the verse shows which attributes signify a condition and which merely portray a situation. In this particular instance, it is not only the context and intrinsic evidence, but explicit words which testify that the daughter of a wife from the previous husband is only prohibited if the husband has had conjugal contact with the wife. It is thus evident that the real reason for prohibition for such a daughter is conjugal contact with her mother. If this is the case, then the husband cannot marry such a daughter whether she has been raised under his guardianship or not. So this is the part that I have wanted to read out to you. And then he says that the second condition stated in the verse is mentioned by the verse, وَحَلَائِلُ أَبْنَائِكُمُ الَّذِينَ مِنْ أَصْلَابِكُم, which means that daughters-in-law are prohibited of the real son only, and not those sons which are adopted. And finally, he says that the third condition is stated in the words, وَأَن تَجْمَعُوا بَيْنَ الْأُخْتَيْنِ, which means that two sisters in wedlock at the same time cannot be married. So this would, of course, mean that once marriage has been dissolved, then, of course, you can marry the sister of your wife, and at the same time, also if there is, if the marriage has been dissolved, then her paternal or maternal aunts, they can also be married. So this is as far as these relationships are concerned, and precisely for this reason, the Prophet is also have reported to have said that neither can a lady and her paternal aunt nor a lady and her maternal aunt can be combined in wedlock. So because of the fact, this would actually amount to having two sisters in wedlock. So just as the Quran says that having two sisters in wedlock is something which is unbecoming and is lewd, in a very similar way, you can say that the paternal aunt of the wife or the maternal aunt of the wife that you already have, you cannot add her in relationships if you've already married a wife. So if you married someone, then her paternal or maternal aunts cannot be added into conjugal contact, because that would in fact amount to an tajma'u bayn al-ukhtayn, which means virtually gathering two sisters in wedlock. So I'm going to stop here, dear viewers, regarding our social Sharia. Inshallah, we'll go on with some of the important areas, of course, bounds and relationships of nikah, and some of the discussions that remain. But for the moment, I'm going to end here by just giving you this recap that the social Sharia, which consists of our norms between genders, and of course it has a wider connotation, starts off with the institution of nikah, how the Quran has dealt with it, and said that this is something which is recommended as far as permanent sexual relations are concerned. And then it has said that in order to give sanctity to this institution of family, there are certain relationships in which with which you cannot contract marriage, because that would be against chastity and modesty. So inshallah, we'll continue with the remaining topics in our future sessions, and if you have any questions regarding today's discussion, please raise them now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I have two questions for you. So first and foremost, what if a woman is unable to get pregnant or produce milk? What would, if she's adopting someone, would that mean that later on, say if it's a girl, her husband is able to marry that girl because she hasn't, the infant hasn't been suckled?
So that is something which is meant for just the conjugal contact. So if if the father has had conjugal contact with the mother, in that case she'll remain prohibited. But if that conjugal contact has not taken place, then she can be married once the divorce takes place between the husband and wife, or in that case, even in this situation. But remember, this is something of a very odd nature. If you also make this stipulation that when you're living in a house, it's not always that you're thinking about marrying someone or having sexual relations with someone. It's just a sort of a safeguard. Other than that, we know that when we adopt children who are in their mature age and you're not suckling them, they are not becoming your foster children. So even they can remain in your house with proper and decent norms being observed between them. So we have cousins coming over and living as guests or in vacations, and in that case there are, situations in which they are in fact situations in which cousins can do live for a longer period. For example, if they are there for studies and they are living with an aunt or an uncle or maybe a cousin. So this is a situation that can arise there as well. So I think the important area that we need to understand here is that when you adopt children, the only thing that you can safeguard in this regard is that sanctity of relationship between that sanctity that emanates from your eyes, and from your eyes not taking that undue liberty and exercising modesty and chastity the way you would do when your cousins would visit you. So for an adopted child, the same mannerism should be adopted, and it is not correct that, as I said, that you adopt a child in his or her adult age and then by suckling that child with milk, you say that, well, he has now become a foster child. Remember, this was a situation in the times of the Prophet, which was an exceptional situation. And these verses were revealed at the time when Salim, the son of Abu Huzaifa, was being considered as a son. So this was like an exceptional case. So other than that, if you have adopted children, they can live in your house, and it's not that you're always going to think about marriage. The only thing is, legally this is something which is allowed. So to have this stipulation that this is allowed legally does not mean that you have to pursue it. It's just a legal allowance that is being stated before you. Other than that, as I said, when you adopt children of any age, if you keep that distance the way you maintain that distance, it's perfectly okay.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. You actually answered my second question too, but I'm wondering, so like those kids, they never become your mahrams in that regard?
They don't. Yeah, they don't. When you talk of mahram, remember, mahram means a person with whom you cannot get married to.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question in the chat that asks, can the wife's daughter from the first marriage marry her second husband's real son?
You see, the principle that they need to understand is that the father and the husband between the two married genders should not be common, neither the father nor the mother. So they just need to apply this principle. The father or the mother must not be common in any of these relationships. So if they are not common, then yes, they can get married. Just a simple principle that neither the father should be common. When I say common, it means that he is responsible of producing that child, nor the mother.
So
neither the father.
If the child is the mother's, however, and her second husband she's had sexual contact with, can her daughter, her real daughter?
I understand. I understand. So I said what we need to do is you just need to apply this principle that is that a person that she is getting married to in any way produced such that the father, her own mother was part of producing that child? No. So the first mother, she was not responsible for producing the second child. Is that so? Because the son has been produced by the father from the previous mother, from the previous wife. So yes, they can get married. You see, what you need to...
The son is from the second husband.
What I'm saying is that you have to make sure that neither the father nor the mother have any role in producing either of the two children. If that is taken, I mean, we need to apply our minds a little more. What I'm saying is that anyone can apply this principle and apply it to the situation. That the father must not be common and the mother must not be common. That as simple as that. If you want an exact answer, I'll have to think about how this things works. But I know the principle. The principle is that son and that daughter, or the son or the boy and the girl who are getting married, must not have a common father and must not have a common mother.
Okay, got it. And the chat said that they got it too. Shabnam, please go ahead.
Sir, I just wanted to ask that in order to be a foster mother, is there a specific duration for which she has to suckle the child,
Right.
right, sir?
There is no specific duration. The only thing is that it should not be planned as something that you are making someone, just as people today do, that if they are soothing the children and if some woman suckles that child and he stops, or the child stops crying, because of that, they think that, well, fosterage has taken place. So fosterage is something which takes place through an arrangement in which you are intentionally saying that now I'm going to suckle the child, whether it is for a couple of months, whether it's for a couple of weeks, and it could discontinue after that. The intent has to be that you are going to suckle the child the way you would bring a child up when he or she needs milk. So there is no fixed duration for that. It's not that you have to suckle the child for, let's say, 3 months or 5 months or 7 months. No, the amount of duration would be governed by the intention that you have, and that is that you are now in this situation that you have taken this decision that someone's mother is not able to suckle the child herself, and she has asked you or requested you or sent that child to you and has asked you to please suckle that child. So, whatever the time, it could be a couple of months, it could be a couple of weeks, because after that the child would grow up. So therefore, fosterage or suckling the child would discontinue. So that would become immaterial. The real thing is that now you have taken up the task of formally suckling the child with milk. So the time period could vary. There is no stipulated time period.
सर कुछ अर्सा पहले तक हमारे मदर्स ग्रैंड मदर्स के टाइम तक तो ये बहुत कॉमन था कि बच्चा रो रहा है तो वो फीड करवा देते थे और अंडरस्टूड, तो अब फिर वो उसको इसी तरह से उसकी सैंक्टिटी हो जाती थी, और मे बी अ फ्यू टाइम्स, नॉट रेगुलरली, लेकिन वो इकट्ठे रहते थे, जॉइंट फैमिली सिस्टम, तो वो हो जाता था। तो सर वो तो फिर वो यही फॉस्टर।
So, as I said, this does not create foster relationship. Foster relationship is only created when you are making this sincere and solemn intent that now I'm going to suckle the child for his fodder, to feed him, and not to just soothe him for crying. Crying, if a child is crying and you're just trying to soothe him by giving that child your milk, that does not create that relationship of fosterage. Fosterage means that now you have decided that your milk is going to nourish that child so that he or she can grow. So that is a very different intent. Unless that intent is there, merely by suckling someone to soothe that child and from stopping him from crying, that does not create fosterage.
सर आपने खुद ही कहा कि इस टाइम पीरियड मैटर नहीं करता, मे बी 2 weeks.
Not the time. You see, time is something else. I am talking about the intent. You see, intent is from your own self. You see, you know that now you have adopted that. You have made this intention that this is, I'm not suckling the child just to quiet him down, but to give him succor, but to give him food so that he can grow and nourish. Every woman knows whether she's feeding the child just to appease that child from crying, or to give him fodder for the sake of the fact that he needs fodder. Because that second thing would be governed by sustained fosterage. It will not just be when the child quietens down. In normal circumstances, that when the child quietens down, you'll stop giving him milk. So that itself shows that you had given that child milk merely to make him quiet, not to feed him.
Right, sir. Sir, ये तो सर ये पहले कॉमन अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी और लोग यही समझते हैं.
As I said, this is an erroneous understanding. Yes, I know our society is fraught with this understanding. So this is what this is the correction that I was wanting to point out, that the Quran has used the words irza'. So arza', the way it has been used, arda'na lakum, which means that you are now taking up this position, this responsibility of feeding a child. It's like a responsibility, not just a part-time thing in which you are trying to soothe a child.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Noshad Shafkat, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Dr. What is the Islamic view about adopting a child? What rights does the child have vis-a-vis his adoptive parents?
So you see, as far as legal rights are concerned, if you're specifically talking about the rights of inheritance, then he has no rights or she has no rights. You can write a will in the favor of the child that you have adopted. You can gift or make a hiba for that child within your own lifetime, that is governed by any amount that you would deem fit. Once you would like to gift something when you are no longer in this world, then you need to write a will which would say that I give this amount or this property, such and such an asset to this boy or girl, and once this will has been discharged or executed, only then the remaining amount will be distributed as your inheritance. So you can write a will or you can give in your own lifetime. Other than that, I mean, if you pass away and you have not written a will, then the child will get nothing.
Child is adopted, for example, nowadays in Pakistan. Can the father get his name on the national ID card, which is a necessity for a child? Or sometimes the real parents are unknown to the adopting parents. What would be the situation there?
In this regard, I mean, you can give your own name, you can give a fictitious name, you can give the name of their previous parents if they are known. What is essential is that you must disclose the identity of the real parents once they grow up. So it's not that you cannot name them after yourself, you can give your own name to the adopted child, but what you cannot do is conceal his parentage if it is known.
If it is unknown,
if it is unknown, then you'll disclose precisely this information to your child, that your parentage was not known and we have adopted you from unknown parents. So he should be given he should be told that his parents were unknown. So whatever the reality, if you know the parents, then the parents should be known to that child, and if they are not known, then this information should be given to him. But as far as naming a child is concerned, as I think there are a number of people who make a point out of this, that you cannot give your own name. This is not correct. That surname can be given, your own surname can be given. What the Quran has said in Surah Ahzab, "Ud'u li abaikum," doesn't mean that you have to give the name of their fathers. What it means is that you must not call yourselves as a real father. So the child should know that you are not the real father. You have adopted that child. So that is what the Quranic verse is telling us in Surah Ahzab, which is erroneously interpreted, and people think that your own name cannot be given. So the Quran is not stopping us from giving the name. What it is stopping us is that you cannot call your child as your real child as if you are the father. So ud'u li abaikum, you must call them, you must tell them that they are the children of some other father and you are just adopted them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. There is another question in the chat that says, I'd assume marriage with mother and sister, incest, was always considered haram and seems against human fitrah. The Quran usually doesn't provide directives for such things, which are common knowledge and part of human nature. So why in this ayah did Allah need to specify those relationships explicitly?
So I just explained this when I started my talk, that what happens is that when the Quran starts correcting something, so it doesn't confine itself to that mere correction. At times it repeats something which is already understood and present in the society. So what needed to be corrected was that you cannot marry your stepmothers. That was all. Because in Arabia of those times, people would marry their stepmothers, and because they would be given inheritance to them. This was all that the Quran needed to correct. But you will find this in many other instances, that once the Quran starts this correction, it not only corrects whatever needed to be corrected, it states something which was already known, just to put it into perspective. So it's not that the Quran is giving this information for the first time. People already knew this information. It's just merely repeating the information for the sake of it.